My name is Takami Clark, and I will be guiding us through this presentation. I represent Big Sky Public Relations, and we work with the Montana Department of Transportation on communications for many different projects and studies. So you might have seen my name floating around with this study or with other projects in the area. I am in the area and work with MDT pretty closely on their communications with different projects they have going on. So you are always welcome to contact me. I am the communications manager for this study, and I am available if you have any questions. MDT has hired us to help in a number of different ways, including creating press releases for the media and hosting public meetings like this one, and just being a resource for you guys so you can ask questions and I can help you through the process and help answer those. So normally this meeting would be hosted in person and we would get to meet face to face, but due to COVID-19 and our concerns for the public safety, we decided to host a virtual meeting. So I do really appreciate everyone who has taken the time to be here today. It really means a lot to hear directly from you all. And I know many of you guys travel this corridor a lot and live on this corridor. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts. I also like to introduce the other people who will be speaking during this presentation, and that is Project Manager Jason Sen, Butte District Administrator Bill Fogarty, and both those folks are of the Montana Department of Transportation. We also have Phil Forbes of Morrison Merrily. Would you all like to say hi?
Hello, everyone. As Takami said, my name is Jason Sen, and I'm the project manager for the Department of Transportation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Fogarty. I am the Montana Department of Transportation Butte District Administrator.
Good evening, everyone. This is Phil Forbes. I am managing this study on behalf of Morrison Merrily and a handful of specialty sub-consultants. Welcome this evening.
All right, and I'd also like to introduce Katie Cleats from Big Sky Public Relations. She's going to be monitoring any questions or comments that come through the Q&A system, so please feel free to utilize that. Please type any questions or comments or thoughts you have throughout the meeting as you're watching slides and thinking about what we're saying. Please feel free to use that box to communicate with us. And if you do see that someone has a question that you also wanted to ask, you can move that up in the queue by using the thumbs up feature. So feel free to use that as well. Katie, did you want to say hi?
Thanks, Takami. Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Katie with Big Sky Public Relations. And just to reiterate what Takami was saying, if you do want to share any of your thoughts with us, we welcome that engagement. And you can do that best by clicking that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. It looks like two little speech bubbles. We already have a question in there that we're looking forward to addressing at the end of the program. Thanks.
Awesome. And again, my name is Takami. I am the communications manager for the Highway 84 East of Norris Corridor Study. And I am definitely here for you if you want to share any thoughts or have any questions. My contact info will be shared at the end of the presentation should you want to get in touch. The last thing I wanted to mention too was that we'll be recording this presentation and placing it on the study's webpage for viewing after these meetings. And I do really appreciate everyone who has tuned in today to meet with us. I'm really looking forward to this session, and I would like to now turn things over to Bill.
Thank you, Takami. I'll talk a little about corridor studies and their use. They occur early in the planning process. We use corridor studies to explore options for improving the road. Construction or changes are not guaranteed with this process. We may find that all of our options are too costly to pursue. Studies help MDT identify feasible solutions. This involves finding the most cost-effective approach to enhancing safety. We identify all possible options and then explore whether construction is possible and how much these options might cost. Roadways that can benefit from safety improvements are nominated for this process. Crash history often informs us on what changes need to occur. Without studies, solutions may only address part of the roadway or may not be the most cost-effective option for the road. These studies are also helpful in laying the groundwork for future work. If we do move forward with an option, we use the information from the study to scope the work appropriately. And with that, I'll turn things over to Jason, MDT's project manager.
Thanks, Bill. I'm going to give you an overview of this corridor study. This particular study is looking at a 3-mile section of Highway 84 from milepost approximately 5.4, which is near Warm Springs Boat Launch, and it extends to roughly milepost 8.4, which is near the Red Mountain Campground. It's highlighted in red on the slide shown on the screen. And MDT has hired the consultant firm Morrison Merrily to conduct this study because Morrison Merrily can dedicate more resources to the study and identify the best solution quicker than if MDT would have kept the study in-house. And traffic in this corridor continues to grow, and so we really need to get the concerns addressed. This particular area is known for its narrow roads and curves along the Madison River. A number of crashes have occurred along these curves, which has prompted this study. I'm sure many of you are likely familiar with these curves that we're referring to. They're very sharp and they require you to slow down quite a bit to drive safely through them right now. This study will determine if there is a better way for traffic to navigate these curves that will reduce the amount and the severity of each of the crashes. MDT has already installed a truck barrier rail out there, along with rumble strips, flashing lights, and signage, which are all intended to help improve the safety of this corridor, and particularly these curves. But unfortunately, we continue to see crashes in this area. And so that's what's prompted this study and why the study is so important. And so we need to see what else can be done to enhance the safety out there. So now I'll turn it over to Morrison Merrily's project manager, Phil Forbes.
Thank you, Jason. We'd like to tell everybody the general study timeline. And as you can see on the slide in front of you, Morrison Merrily is currently in the process of developing feasible concepts to increase safety, such as improving the ability for drivers to see the road ahead, adding shoulders, reducing the sharpness of the corners, etc. At the current time, Morrison Merrily and our study partners are currently gathering information on existing conditions, such as a survey of the existing topography. We've done some geotechnical borings and investigations of the rock outcroppings in that area. We're doing a cultural resource and biological resource survey, wetland delineations. We're identifying recreational opportunities in the corridor. Then Morrison Merrily will move towards identifying some geometric changes to the roadway that would increase safety, but with an understanding of the difficulty of construction, the anticipated costs, and the impacts to the various resources. So we are not only researching the feasibility of construction, we are looking at the cost. And we would not recommend changes where the cost is high and the benefit to the public is low. As indicated on the screen, this fall, Morrison Merrily will present our findings to MDT, and MDT will then review the study to determine a path forward. If we do identify a cost feasible option, the study would then move to the nomination phase, wherein MDT would evaluate the project timing against the funding that would be available and get it plugged in to their 5-year planning horizon. At this point, this is only a study. We haven't identified an option that would become a project, but if we are able to do that, 2026 would be the earliest that you would see this move into construction. Could be even later, depending on what the funding is, or if we simply don't find a cost-effective option. As with nearly all of the MDT projects, they do utilize federal funding, so we need to meet all the necessary criteria to use those funds, and that will be a factor in how the project moves forward. Specifically, environmental review would be very important. At this time, I would like to reinforce what you've heard a couple of times already, and that is, if you have some thoughts for us, some options, anything we may not be thinking of at the current time, I'd encourage you to use that Q&A box so that we can have your concerns in mind as we move forward. The natural question, I think, is what options are we exploring? At the current time, we've listed these general options, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on the following slides. But the basics are carve into the landscape, where we would make the curves much more gentle, more gentle around those rock outcrops by carving into the rock outcrop. The other would be find a realigned roadway that might include a new bridge over the Madison River. There's a realigned alignment that would possibly go around the mountains. And then we'll also be looking at a tunnel option. I should state at the outset here that all of these options are likely to be expensive long-term solutions. And we will be trying to find one that's feasible and cost-effective. And we would always welcome public feedback on these options, not necessarily as a popularity contest, but just to make sure that we balance your thoughts with what we can feasibly do. So on the next slide, the carve into landscape option, we've shown a single curve here that would be a gentler curve there at milepost 6.7-ish. That's where it's particularly tight. I believe the rock outcrop there is between 300 and 400 feet tall. It's right next to the road, and the road is right next to the river. So this option here would be to push into that rock outcropping with a road with gentler curves and better geometry. There's another spot here that similar action might be taken, and that would be at milepost 5.8. There again is another outcrop that is probably creating a sight distance problem and has resulted in pretty tight geometry, pretty tight curves. On the next slide, I thought I would just take a moment to orient folks as to what's on the slide. We have shown the Warm Springs boat launch and the Red Mountain Campground. Those are the general limits of our study, as Jason indicated earlier. The two major rock outcrops at milepost 6.7 and 5.8, we're just pointing to those. There's a couple of alignments that are shown there. One is the east side alignment, shown in orange. We're looking at multiple options for where that roadway could be relocated, but this explores an alignment that would require a new bridge over the Madison River, generally at milepost 6. It would go up that draw there, cross over the ridge, and then generally follow Pole Creek Road south or north until it reconnects with Highway 85. The alignment that we refer to as the west side alignment that would go around would keep the current bridge in service while finding a different route off to the west. It generally follows Cold Springs Road until it turns south to get back to connect to Highway 84 near milepost 2.2. The last major option that we're looking at on the next slide is the tunnel option. What we are showing here is just one of many variations on this particular concept. And what we're trying to do is tunnel through that major rock outcropping at 6.8, 6.7, I'm sorry. And we're trying to locate it to where we can have better geometry on the entrance and exit for the tunnel. And I think with that, I'll turn it back over to Bill Fogarty.
Thank you, Phil. A little bit about Vision Zero. Vision Zero is a goal of 0 deaths and serious injuries on Montana highways. To make a significant impact on fatalities and serious injuries on all public roads in Montana, we also need the 5th E, which stands for everyone. We can use education, enforcement, emergency services, and engineering resources, but we can't do it without every Montanan. We want to bring Highway 84's crash frequency to 0. So with that, I'll turn things back to Takami.
Thanks, Bill. As promised, my contact information is here should you wish to touch base after this meeting with any questions or comments. And if you'd really rather just talk to me directly, that is totally fine. You can reach me by emailing takami@bigskypublicrelations.com. That's Takami at bigskypublicrelations.com. Or you can call our project hotline as well, 406-207-4484. And that hotline is staffed Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you call during those hours, you will get a call back or they will answer the phone right then and there. If you would like to stay up to date on how the study is moving forward, feel free to email me as well, and I will put you on a list and make sure that you do get updates on this project. So please be sure to take that avenue as well in case you haven't already. You are also welcome to visit our website at bit.ly.com/highway84 to learn more about the study, and we will be updating the website as well with both this recording and more information about how the study proceeds. So I did want to just give a quick preview of that website. So you should be able to see that. Many of you are pretty familiar because you probably used one of these links to sign up. And so we do have a lot of helpful information on this page, including just general project information. We also have our contact information on the side, so you can always come here as well if you're looking for how to reach us. And we do have a number of links on the right-hand side. So there is our project map, so you can take a look at that. It's also on the main page. We also have our project brochure. This has a lot of helpful information, pretty similar to what you've also seen in these slides. So many of you have probably seen this as well, but you can definitely browse this and just get some more info. We also have our rack card. So this is typically slipped inside the brochure, and it has our different solutions that we're exploring as well, at least the main ones. And a Q&A document, just in case you wanted to read through some of the common questions that we've gotten, and maybe your questions also on this document and you just wanted to refresh yourself or learn a little bit more, you can definitely browse through this document and see what we have responded to and what we're thinking as far as answers to different questions. There's also this flyer as well, which is just a flyer about our open house. And so many of you have probably also seen this as well. But definitely feel free to use the website and keep checking back for updates. We will be updating this website again with the project materials, especially as they become available and we move forward with the study. I've pulled our PowerPoint up again just in case, so you can write down any information as well. But upon exiting this meeting, you should be taken to a survey, and you can always use this survey as well in case you would really prefer to just leave your comments there and you don't really feel comfortable within this format with speaking with us. So you are welcome to just use that survey. It does pop up in another tab once you exit this meeting, so you can definitely use that as well to share your thoughts with us. I'd like to now transition to answer any questions that we got. And again, I would encourage you to use the Q&A box to submit questions and also thoughts too, if you just wanted to give your thoughts on what you've seen today and share that with the team. So Katie, do you want to lead us with the questions that we've got?
You bet, Takami. So one just came through from Rachel Brown, and she is saying, in my opinion, I don't like the carving or the tunnel on the east side realignment. They love the beauty of the drive along the river, but that they're more in favor of a west side realignment. And with that in mind, they're curious what would happen to the current road because they live in that area.
This is Phil. Thank you, Katie. If, for example, the west realignment were to turn out to be the most feasible option, we would anticipate that the current road would remain in service mainly as a recreational access road. The Bureau of Land Management manages most of the recreation sites along that corridor. And even if the alignment of the road changes, the public would not lose access to any of the boat launches or campgrounds, and will still be able to enjoy those recreation opportunities. So I appreciate your comment and getting an early read on the tunnel option or the east alignment option. I hope I've answered your question. We would still have access from the current road.
Thank you, Phil. Rachel just followed up saying that she likes that. So I think we answered her question, which is great. Next, we have a question from Peter Armstrong, who is suggesting closing Highway 84 to semi-traffic, especially with the Highway 191 remodel. And I know that there was a question about that earlier as well. So maybe we could just address what semi-traffic looks like and what considerations may be for truck travel in that area.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, this is a good question. It's a concern. We understand that seeing large trucks take these turns is a concern for many. And I think I can assure you on behalf of the team and MDT that your comments are not falling on deaf ears. In terms of either diverting semi-traffic, truck traffic off of 84 or somehow restricting them. Primarily for this study, we are hoping to come up with a feasible construction option that eases the concern. I do have to say that as a primary route and a federal aid highway, it would violate both state and federal laws to indefinitely restrict truck traffic on Highway 84. As I'm sure everyone knows, this corridor serves as a major farm to market route, as well as for local deliveries to the communities in the area. We know that any type of restrictions, for example, day or night travel, increased fines for speeding, whether short or long term, would likely require legislative action to enact. At this time, MDT and the study team is advancing under the premise that the commercial vehicles and trucks will continue to utilize Highway 84 as they do today. Again, your concerns are heard and duly noted. I think it would also be nice just to indicate, it's kind of hard to get a frame of reference, but the current traffic on the Highway 84 in this area averages about 2,100 vehicles per day, of which 9% are considered commercial vehicles or trucks. And that would essentially count everything from anything larger than a normal pickup truck. So it's small delivery trucks all the way up to the semi trucks. Again, that's about 9% of the traffic stream that we're seeing today.
Thanks, Phil. Bill, do you have anything to add, or are we good to move on to the next question with that?
No, I think Phil did a great job. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So another question that we had come through early on in the presentation was again from Ms. Brown. She said that they live up in the canyon and commute that road several times a day. And her question is more asking about the legislation around how this road could be used. So Rachel has asked if it would be possible to use a toll road to pay for construction or changes that are coming, and then only Madison County residents would be able to drive that for free.
Thank you, Katie. This is Phil again. That's an interesting idea. I will have to admit that I'm not an attorney, so I don't know what the legal ramifications are, what Montana law may or may not say about establishing a toll road. I am fairly confident in saying that I don't believe there are any toll roads in Montana at this time. So I guess my answer is your comments certainly duly noted. I find it interesting. I simply don't know the answer to whether or not it could be done in Montana.
And this is Bill Fogarty. I'll add a little bit there. So currently our highways and work to improvements to our highways are funded through fuel taxes, both diesel and gasoline. And so all users of the road then, you know, that utilize fuel products are helping contribute towards improvements statewide. So, and Phil is correct. I'm not aware of any toll roads in Montana, and again, would likely require legislation to implement that.
Thank you, Bill and Bill and Phil. So next we have a question talking about usage, especially along the river, and thinking about the recreationalists who use the river access in the area. So the attendee has asked, since the area often has hundreds of people and vehicles involved in rafting the segment during the summer, and therefore people walking along the shoulders and cars merging off and off, cars merging on and off of the highway, which of these options would best accommodate activities without creating additional danger through the facilitation of more traffic?
Thank you, Katie. Certainly, there is a lot of recreational activity for a few months during the year. I guess at this point, I think we're not far enough along in our study for me to provide a single answer to the question about which of the options would best accommodate those activities. And I also think what I'm hearing in the rest of the question is, will there be a situation, if you build it, will they come? I hear the questioner is concerned about making improvements that would draw more traffic to this highway. We will try to evaluate that. I don't know that we can control that. Again, this highway is on the primary system, so it is fairly high in the hierarchy of highways in the state and is open to everyone. I do think I would like to mention that in response to some of the problems that are existing today with the use of the campgrounds and the boat launch areas, that MDT is also currently working on a project. It's called the Madison River Turn Lanes Project. And the intent of that project is to provide a left turn lane into the Warm Springs boat launch site and the Blacks Ford fishing access site, which is outside our study limits. And please keep in mind, this is a separate project from Madison River Corridor study that we're engaged in, but one that also addresses safety in the corridor, and I think is responsive to your concerns. I should note that the construction of the turn lanes project is not currently within MDT's 5-year funding plan, but would also note that MDT reviews that plan every year. So it seems that it will be looked at every time the transportation improvement plan is looked at. I think that's all I can offer at this point.
Thank you, Phil. So our next question then is somewhat related to the truck traffic that we were talking about before, but the attendee has made a good point that since cost has been noted as an important subject here as part of this study, and since they're large trucks that create the same wear and tear on the road base as the equivalent of 1,000 cars or so, he's asking what the plans are to reduce truck traffic on the route so that we don't have to be continuously repairing roads, continually making repairs to the road, even if it's new.
I can't vouch for the direct relation, but I will agree that the wear and tear on a roadway created by a heavy axle load is greater than, say, normal traffic. I would comment that for any project that we do, any highway project that we do, the design of the pavement section is intended to last without need for major repair for at least a 20-year period. And the incremental cost of accommodating the trucks really isn't that great. So while your comment about cost is certainly duly noted, if a project is identified, I would say the relative incremental cost to accommodate trucks really is probably insignificant to the overall cost of the project.
Thank you, Phil. And so along those same lines, there's been a couple of comments of talking about that the vast majority of accidents involve trucks. And so pieces there that we will definitely be sure to take into consideration as we're moving forward with this study. But there was another question asking if closing 84 to semi-traffic would be an option or a recommendation to do so.
I guess I feel like I could just repeat my the earlier answer about somehow limiting or diverting semi-traffic off of Highway 84. Again, comments are duly noted, but as a federal aid highway and a primary route on the state's transportation system, we currently can't restrict traffic or otherwise divert them on a long-term basis.
Perfect. Thanks, Phil. That's helpful information to have. So next we have a comment from Mr. Armstrong, who's saying that he feels like on weekends in the summer, the traffic is heavy enough that it's really dangerous to manage incidents or accidents. So just a note that we'll want to make sure that we're looking at. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add to that, Phil, about how traffic patterns might be assessed as part of the study.
Well, we're certainly aware that summer weekends, there is a huge traffic load here. And I would say that all of the options that we're looking at, one of the things, as I mentioned early on, that we're looking at and hoping to do to increase safety in this area is to provide better shoulders through this part of the corridor. I don't necessarily know that that answers the question. Again, I think the turn lanes project that MDT is also working on would be responsive to that concern, but thank you for the comment. It's duly noted.
Great, thank you. So we have another question that's talking about the timeline for this project. And so Mr. Eggers is wondering if there are interim solutions that may improve safety. So things like police monitoring, banning of semi-trucks or others that may be in the area.
Well, interim solutions, I'd reinforce what Jason Sen presented back in late 2016. The department had a safety project, and at that, the worst of the corners there at milepost 6.7, the department went through and installed some chevrons to give drivers a better visual clue about this, how sharp that corner is. They installed flashing beacons with radar detection that advises drivers that they're approaching the corner too fast. They added rumble strips. And again, that was in late 2016. As I've looked at the traffic, the reported crash data that I have available to me, it anecdotally does appear that the rate and severity of accidents has decreased since that period of time. I think that's a real credit. I'll go a little farther than I think the questioner has intended perhaps, but another interim solution that some have suggested is reducing the speed limit. And I'd like to offer that per Montana law, the speed limits are set by the state's Transportation Commission. And for them to consider a change in speed limit, a request for a speed study needs to be proposed to MDT at the local level. And in this case, the local authority would be the Madison County Commissioners. It's interesting that in this case, the Madison County Commissioners have made that request, and MDT is currently in the process of conducting the speed study. Their staff was out collecting traffic data last month in July. They're in the process of compiling the data and evaluating it, and will develop a report of their findings and recommendations, which would be presented then to the Madison County Commission. I'd say that the speed study would need to support any proposed change in the speed limit. That's really not a part of the study that we are conducting, but it is an ongoing look at the potential short-term improvements. And I suspect that they will take another look at whether more signing, perhaps additional rumble strips would help on an interim basis.
Thank you, Phil. And it looks like we've had a couple of comments following up on that, asking specifically about rumble strips. So could you maybe just speak to that a little bit more in depth, and we can address all of those questions?
Well, so I'm familiar with 3 different versions of rumble strips. Each is intended to alert the driver of a vehicle through essentially vibration that they are leaving the driving lane or otherwise coming upon a situation that demands their attention. It's intended to get their attention in case they're driving distracted. The first, and how that is done, is to essentially route out little divots, if you will, in the pavement on a regular basis, so that it creates that attention gaining vibration in the car. There are centerline rumble strips, so that a driver, if starts to leave his driving lane towards oncoming traffic, is alerted to that. And that has a certain vibration to it, if you will. Then there's also rumble strips over on the fog line or near the fog line that have a different vibration. So even in inclement weather, a driver can tell which way he's diverting from his lane. And then the last type of rumble strip would be cut across the lane. And it's usually 2 or 3 series of a number of those to advise the driver that he or she needs to pay attention. Something is coming up. Often those rumble strips are installed in advance of a stop sign after a long stretch of otherwise uncontrolled highway. It just catches people's attention.
Okay, thank you, Phil. I think that was helpful for a lot of folks. So again, we're having some different odds and ends and different conversations about truck traffic, and then making sure that as this project moves forward, that it's very clear of how trucks may or may not be impacted. So all of those are noted, and we'll be sure to add that throughout the comments as we move forward. But next we have a question saying that many trucks run up this corridor due to a lack of permanent, that there's not a weigh station essentially. And so that there might be one in Madison that could be staffed more often, but it's not really the case. So the question therefore is, what could be done to discourage this route, or at least make their choices equivalent when it comes to inspections for large trucks?
This is Phil again. A little outside of my purview as an engineer. but I am aware that Montana Department of Transportation has a motor carrier services division. And at this point, I would just say your comment is duly noted, and I know that the MDT folks on the call will, I'm sure, bring your comment to the attention of motor carrier services to see if there are any changes that could be made.
And this is Bill. I'll add to that a little bit in that I think it was last year, might have been the year before, time gets away from me, but recently the scale site on 287 northbound near Cameron actually was upgraded to a permanent site. So there's an actual scale pit there now. And there's a motor carrier services officer stationed out of Ennis. So part of the comments sent in, noted that it would be staffed more often, and that is the case.
Okay. So next says, there's just a comment that says during the last MDT administration, long haul trucks were diverted at I-15 before getting onto 20 in the south. So just something to take note of. Wanted to be sure that we called out. And then next, there is a comment from Keith saying, have you looked at crossing on the California corner and going back to the backside of the river, just like how the road used to be?
So this is Phil. We didn't actually include that in any of the presentation today, and likely we're going to take a look at it, but having been there a few times trying to size it up, I really don't believe that will turn out to be a feasible option. We trade one big rock outcropping for another. I agree there that the old road, you can still see the pier out in the middle of the river where the road used to cross. Again, we run into a lot of the same geometric constraints. Today's standards are safer. I guess I would just conclude by saying, yeah, I think we'll take a look at it, but on initial inspection, again, I think we'll just trade one problem for another.
Thank you, Phil. The next question is, with the heavy truck traffic accounting for 9% of the traffic through the canyon, what percentage of crashes do they cause or are they involved with?
Thank you, Katie. So we've been looking at the available reported crash data for a 10-year period. And in that 10-year period, crashes that are attributed to involving commercial vehicles or trucks amounts to 18% of the crashes. I would go on to say that, to emphasize that those are the reported crashes. I think clearly what we're hearing from folks is there's also, obviously, for people who use this route quite a bit, there are the near crashes that are of concern. It didn't end up being in a reported crash, but we certainly are listening to the concern for those near crashes that aren't reported.
Phil, it looks like as you were sharing those statistics, a couple additional follow-up questions came through, so I might lump those together. So they're wondering how many fatalities, if we have that information, and then if there's additional information that we have regarding when the crashes are occurring. And the example was either like summer or winter, or if there were other pieces that we could speak to.
Thanks, Katie. Apologize for shuffling my papers here a little bit while I try to find the answer. In that 10-year period, there were a total of 4 crashes resulting in 4 crashes resulting in a total of 5 fatalities. Um, the balance of the question, looking for patterns is how I would characterize that. I can't say that we've done an exhaustive or truly rigorous analysis, but I have personally looked through the data and tried to establish in my own mind if there was any correlation between time of day, month of the year. It looks like all months of the year crashes have occurred. There's daytime crashes, nighttime crashes. To be honest, I was trying to see if there was a correlation between the heavy recreational use during the summer and the crash history, but I didn't see one. But we can certainly continue to look at that. If the questioner has some insight or input that they could offer, that would be great.
Okay, thank you, Phil. So speaking of waste stations, Brenda chimed in to say that it would make more sense to have a waste station at Four Corners to divert the trucks before they come down to Highway 84. I guess it was a question. Wouldn't it make more sense? So I don't know, that might be more of a question for Bill or things to look at in the longer spectrum of the project.
Yeah, that's a good question. And so just so folks know, today we're talking about the corridor study, the 3-mile corridor study along Highway 84, but also going on concurrently is the US 191 corridor study. And there is currently a scale facility at Four Corners in it'd be the southwest quadrant of that intersection. And MDT is looking at options to relocate that facility. There's operational issues with its location and proximity to the intersection. And so that's a great comment, and we need to share that comment with the US 191 corridor team.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Okay, so next we have a question about the speed studies. So why is the speed limit recommended? Yellow sign versus white sign and actual speed limits. So I think we're talking about why that process happens and how it isn't necessarily involved with this project.
I'm interpreting the question as being one of how the current roadway is signed. Again, that real sharp corner is, I believe, signed at an advisory speed of 45. And that's a fairly standard practice to have a uniform, the white sign or regulatory speed is uniform through segments of highway, with the advisory speed, the yellow ones, put up to advise motorists of a situation where they need to slow down to safely navigate that. I would say, in a general sense, the regulatory speed, again, is set over a longer segment of highway and is intended to cut down on or minimize situations where differential speed occurs. People tend to drive the speed limit, and part of the speed study is to figure out what speed are travelers or vehicles being operated at today, and you set the regulatory speed to that. It minimizes having differential speed, and by that, a person doing 70 coming up on somebody who's only doing 50. That's a different and its own kind of safety problem. Again, the yellow signs is just on those spot locations. It's a standard practice to use that to advise drivers they are coming up on a situation where the regulatory speed is too fast.
Thanks, Phil. I think that answered that question quite well. So we have, actually doesn't look like there are two questions, but two comments that I just wanted to throw out for the rest of the group to make sure that we all heard them. So one was saying that it feels like the entire community agrees that commercial trucking through this route is a problem, and that there should be some energy behind this aspect of the improvement in the area, which I think we definitely have noted. And then secondly, there's a comment that says, try passing a truck in the winter in the snow, you cannot see. So I don't know if there's anything more that anyone would like to add to those points, but definitely good comments.
Katie, this is Phil again. I'll just try to fill in while people may be thinking about what they'd like to ask or offer. And I would say that this kind of input is very helpful to both MDT and those of us on the design team or the study team. This is the perfect time in the study to get this kind of input so that we make sure that we look at all options and understand clearly the concerns of the community. So even if, as Takami said, if you don't have a particular question or comment or thought today, sometime after this open house is over, please offer those comments. We love to have them.
Thanks, Phil. I would like to just jump in here too and say thanks again for everyone's participation today and your time today. I know that I can kind of sense some frustration in folks and different comments about just where they're seeing improvements on the highway and what they think should happen. And please know that we do understand that that is born out of a concern for safety on this highway. And we do absolutely share that concern for safety. And we do hear you guys. And we take everything into consideration. And it is helpful to hear about those concerns, even if we are somewhat limited in what we can do. So I do really want to just reach out and appreciate everyone for attending and sharing those thoughts. It is really helpful for us. And if you do have any last questions or any comments, you're welcome to type those in. We do have 5 more minutes if you wanted to just sort of get anything else, any other questions or anything else off your chest. This is definitely a great place for that. And you do have the ears of everyone in the district right now. So it's a good opportunity to really get your comment quickly to MDT.
A follow-up question talking about the speed bumps and or rumble strips. So Phil, could you just go back and talk about why those may or may not be added as part of this project?
Well, first I'd differentiate the speed bumps are generally those nasty things we see in parking lots. And I don't think you would ever see those on an open highway, especially on the primary route. But if the question does involve the rumble strips, I think that's a well-accepted practice. I think the safety that is a result of identifying for drivers, either they're leaving their lane or they're coming up on a situation that needs their attention. I would expect that those would readily be applied as a short-term solution. I guess I'm looking forward to MDT's traffic operations folks concluding their speed study and their recommendations. They certainly, as we said before, the department implemented similar safety improvements back in late 2016. And if we can identify additional improvements like rumble strips, I'm sure that will be readily considered by the department.
Thanks, Phil. And again, not seeing anything come through, but we do have just a few more minutes, 2 more minutes. If you guys wanted to share anything, any thoughts, any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And again, too, if there wasn't if you more confused about any answer and you just want to ask a question, again, that is totally welcome as well.
We did have a comment come through that said several years ago there was signage at Norris recommending that commercial trucking stay on 287 due to heavy recreational activity on 84. That worked well in this user's opinion. So at this time of year, she's recommending that there should be this kind of signage at both ends of Highway 84 for safety.
I appreciate the comment. And I understand it as just advisory signage that would make those, say, over-the-road truckers who may not be familiar with the area, put them on notice that they're going to get into some heavy congestion and a lot of traffic. I'm sure that the department folks will take that into consideration.
And along those same lines, for additional consideration, the same resident has asked if similar signage can be used for non-essential trucking. So something else to take note of.
Yes, thank you.
All right, and it looks like we are at time, and I really do appreciate everyone for jumping on this call and meeting with us. Please feel free to reach out if you do think of anything after the meeting. We are still collecting feedback and listening to everyone and hearing their thoughts. So do encourage you to reach out, and you can always keep up to date on this project as well via the website. And again, thank you so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and please do share any additional thoughts whenever you can. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.